What we're going to try and do, aren't we, Ken, is not only to ask people to comment who are angry about this because it's going through their back garden or going through the middle of their living room, but also to try and see whether that sacrifice is worthwhile. I think you would agree, Ken, wouldn't you, that there were plenty of people who opposed the motorway system in this country, but really the motorway system in this country was vital for this country, even if it was inconvenient for some people. The question I ask is HS2 really going to transform, as the government seems to suggest, economies up north, or not?
The thing about the motorway, the motorways linking cities have worked out, but when they were planned by the government in the 1950s, the expectation was cars wouldn't use them, it'd just be very good vehicles. Where do these idiots come from?
But it's a history of idiocy. When the NHS was introduced, it was thought that the demands on the public purse would reduce because once people got healthy, they wouldn't need the doctors.
And then the Tories got in and we all started feeling ill.
Anyway, Kenneth, what are we going to do now? We're going to talk to someone who, we have our prejudices, but we want to talk to a man who has the facts at his fingertips. How long have I known you, Christian Trunkett? You must be more than 20 years. You're really are probably our foremost expert, longest-serving expert on these transport issues. So we're glad to have you on. This is Christian Wolmar. Thanks very much for joining us.
Well, that's what it says on my website, so it must be correct.
No, but I mean, you're a familiar name. And one of the things, because Ken and I do try and play some intelligent part in planning these programmes, and I thought there was no point in our discussing HS2 just to get people ringing in saying it's going through my granny's house, it's outrageous, which, of course, in one sense it is. But we needed to try and ask ourselves, why does anyone want to do it in the first place? And are the reasons that they want to do it in the first place valid? And that's what the National Audit Office was rather calling into question this week, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, what is odd, I mean, if you read articles on my website I wrote 6-9 months ago, various times, and you read the National Audit Report, National Audit Office report, they've actually raised all the same issues. And I think the most fundamental one is that this scheme sort of landed on our planet from sort of nowhere as the solution to our problems, the capacity on the railways or whatever, and without really any proper debate as to, what do we need and do we need it, first of all, what do we need and what form should it come in? And I think that's what they've actually highlighted. And the second issue they've highlighted is that even in the government's own terms, it has absolutely terrible business case.
You see, that's the key to it, because they're saying, the government's saying, sorry to interrupt you, but sort of, get you a chance to deal with the facts here. The government think it will transform the economic performance of the Midlands, and then when the second limb of it is built, one bit going, of course, up to Leeds, the other bit going up into Lancashire, to Manchester, it will transform the economies of the Midlands and the North and create around 100,000 new jobs. But I mean, will it? Why do they think it will?
Well, I don't know, and nor does the National Audit Office. I mean, that's the sort of thing that is just plucked out of the air, and there is no justification. And the key thing here is, they're linking a very big city with some smaller cities. So does it benefit the smaller cities,
or the big
does
one?
It benefit,
Yes.
Christian,
and
I mean, when you look at previous estimates of the cost-benefit of rail schemes, the Victoria Line and the Jubilee Line, the Treasury estimate of the cost-benefit was half what it turned out to be in both cases.
Right.
But is that an argument in favour of HS2?
Well, no, it's actually broadly saying, how on earth can you predict 20 years down the road what the benefit will be? All we know is that in America, their growth to be the largest capitalist economy in the world was built on putting railways in, broadly backed by state subsidy. You built the railway, then they came along and built motorways.
Books, Ken.
Yes, I have.
It says that in all my books.
I know.
But there is a difference. There's a
Kenneth Steele's ideas, usually bad ones, but yours is obviously a good one.
So what do you think, how can we be certain what the benefit of this will be?
No, we can't, Ken, and you full know well that. But look, if you're building the Victoria Line or the Jubilee Line and you're linking a whole lot of very heavily populated areas, and you've got a growing jobs market in the centre of London, you've got growth in London and so on, it's very likely that this is a useful thing to do. But if you're building a rail line that parallels an existing pretty efficient rail line that doesn't bring about any environmental benefits, that has a very dodgy case in its own terms, and that instinctively one doesn't think that this is going to be a great solution, I think one has to look at it more carefully than the government has in the past. And what worries me is that all three major political parties support this. And I think that's a great shame. I wish somebody would come up against it so that it would have to be tested properly.
When this got kicked off and it started under Labour, kicked off under the coalition, I wrote to Philip Hammond saying there'll be huge opposition because you've got double the size of Euston Station. That means demolishing hundreds of homes. You'll cause environmental havoc in West London. And I wrote and said, much cheaper, why don't you just upgrade the existing line into Euston, but then take it underground and come out at Waterloo, so trains can come from Manchester and go to Southampton or to Dover. You get what France has got in Paris. Deep tunnels taking suburban trains and intercity trains through the centre of the city. You get at least 20 trains an hour in each direction going through there. You don't need to demolish homes around Euston. You don't need to get into a situation of huge devastation in West London. And you will get a pick-up in the speed to Birmingham.
That's certainly, as far as I'm concerned, a better idea. There's all this stuff about the fact that the West Coast main line is full, but actually, when you travel on those trains to Birmingham, I'm sure David has done many times, and you have as well.
Yeah.
When you travel on these trains, they're never actually full, and they have actually just put two extra carriages, and of course they're full on a Friday night, but they always will be, and that's a different factor. But at the moment their usage is about 40-50%. Of seats. And what is to say there's going to be all this extra demand coming that will justify, 20 trains an hour on a new line? I just don't see it myself.
Christian, thank you very much. That was Christian Wolmar, who has been for many years one of our foremost commentators on transport issues, really giving that HS2 a big thumbs down.
We got Keri in Riceset, who... Yeah, your garden. I mean, HS2's going under your garden, Keri?
Yeah, it was going through our garden. Yeah. So we're lucky in that it's now going under our garden. But, just up the road from us, it emerges from the tunnel and just devastates the whole area of Ickenham and Harefield. And, there's very limited resources for people in London for getting out in the fresh air and doing things like water activities, and just semi-rural, and they are going to be putting hundreds and hundreds of lorries every single day through that residential area. People are going to be living near terrible noise pollution, and, they just treat these people so terribly. This week, someone who's never known her property was at risk at all from HS2 got a letter out of the blue after 3 years, and they've never communicated before, and just was told her property is now affected because they need to put the water supply through there. And when she called them, they used the words like, well, it's just this, it's just that. And her dad built the house in the 70s by hand, and now their house is worthless, but they don't want to buy it for another 3 years.
Well, Keri, my sister, because she couldn't get a council house in London, had to move down to Woking, and this was back in 1970.
I've heard you talk about Woking and the trains before.
Literally, at the end of her garden, and it was quite long, and then there was a gap. The main line from Waterloo down to Guildford hurtled by about every 10 minutes. And while you were there, we go down and you'd be having lunch or watching the telly, and everything had to stop for about a minute while the train went by.
But
this just never stopped.
There's no doubt about it. Those trains, one wouldn't want to cut that line. What interests me, Keri, amongst many things that you've said, it seems as though all you are being told about is the bad stuff. Has anyone tried to convince
no.
you that it's in the
No.
national interest or not?
No.
I mean,
No,
I don't say it is in the national interest, but those who advocate it say it's in the national interest. Do
No.
they try and persuade you, or just leave it to you to sort of just put up with the downside?
Well, when we had these things called community forums, so I represent residents of the London Borough of Hillingdon, which is a massive borough, at these meetings, and that's one of the questions we ask them is, sell it to us, because we don't want to just...
Exactly.
If there's some good news, tell us, and they have actually kind of just admitted there isn't any, or we'll come back. So on a local level, there is no good news story ever, but nationally... we're completely aligned with HS2 Action Alliance, Stop HS2, the Green Party, anybody that opposes it has taken the time to look at the detail. It just doesn't add up.
And the
It's not
problem, and I think
worthwhile.
Kerry, sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but I think one important point, you see, this week you have got a formidable ally. The National Audit Office have reservations, they say, about the business case for HS2. That is a huge advantage to you, because the National Audit Office are deemed to look at the economic case objectively, and if they're unconvinced by the economic case, plainly there's no case for putting this thing through your garden or under it.
Yeah, I have to say that was such a wonderful day, because it's just somebody who is recognised saying things that lots of people, economists, I think one of the best things was when one journalist said they can't find a single economist to talk in favour of HS2, and that's why we keep seeing Pete Waterman. So we all kind of know it. Like you say, that was a really great blow against HS2 and a fabulous vindication for campaigners like me. So, yeah, it was
Kerry, thank you very much for your call. I dare say we'll return to this, and hopefully we'll have a chance to return to you.